Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Bottom Rung. With me, Kindar, Rights, and Ty, the Tiger Soup. If you want to listen to these live every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern. And today, we are doing Chapter 10. Tibs did his best not to attract attention as he walked through the crowd. He knew how, but there were so many people milling about the paths between that it made that difficult. It also made his fingers itch from the tempting pockets around. As he approached the alley leading to his destination, the crowd finally thinned, as none of the tents in the encampment were occupied. Punctual, Arctic said, making Tibbs jump and come from. I like that in a subordinate. I am not your Tibbs fault. The adventurer smiled. Don't worry about it. It just means someone who carries out my orders. Suspicious chuckled. Doesn't mean you're my slave. I would want you. You reach the unfinished building against one of the crates. Fine. Stack of wondering what this building was going to be. Why the work had stopped. Before he could ask what he'd have to do, Bardic took a blue stone from a pocket and handed it to him. What is it? Turned it over, watching the light reflect. What does it look like? And open. Better off people on the street sometimes wore them as marks of their status. He had stolen one and tried to sell it. It was where he'd learned what it was called, right before he was beaten by the owner. Very good. That's what it is. Have you been to the Long in the Tooth Tavern? Tibbs nodded, studying the trying to determine what special about it, because there had to be something more important on the street. They were important on the street. Here, they could be valuable travel that lined us paths. So there's the old man behind the bar, heavy set white mustache drooping over his lips, hiding his. People call him the old walrus, said, in Bardic chuckle. He tried to find out what they called him, why they called him that, and because of the mustache, that walrus was an animal. He's your target. I need you to drop that stone into one of his pockets. Narrowed his eyes at the adventurer. That's it. I put this in a pocket and I paid for my training. For a rogue, why don't you do that yourself? And don't get caught. I can't have people know I'm involved. And I'm not the one who training. Going back. If you aren't interested in doing this, I'll time I've already invested a loss and we go our separate way. He closed his hand over the stone. I'd pay. Just don't understand why go through all that for a stone. Message. A code. That's not your concern, is it? Arctic replied with a smile. Or what you need to do is that needs man's pocket. And it has to be done before the end of the day. Mealtime is best. Going to have to help the servers since he doesn't have enough and everyone wants to eat there. It was still the only tavern running. Although a second one. The man had a knife in his hand. Good. Then how about we spend our time until then practicing? Tibbs looked at the knife as he had it come. Tried to look for a sheath, one secreted rogue, but he couldn't see where one could be hidden. Knife out, held it the way Bardic had shown him last train. Waited. Tibbs snuck into the tavern on exiting, an advantage of his mind. Every table was full of people clamoring for food. The space between tables was packed with people shoving one another to reach the bar for a tankard of whatever the barkeep had. Tibbs didn't think the stacked barrel would last long. Get their fill. The crowd in the tavern was composed of people building the town, as well as merchants and ready to spend the little coins they had kept for their run on drinks that taste. Tibbs thought that was foolish, but maybe the streets they came from had tastier than his, and the mess tent's food wasn't to their liking. He found a corner, kept clear mostly by how small it was, and waited for the barkeep to step out from behind the bar. The old walrus was stocky, but accepted. So much so he was almost fat, tall. He wore a dirty shirt under a leather apron, carried as he tankard after stepping one new large barrel after the other. He'd gone through half of them, just barrels out, replacing new ones. Some were adventurers, some runners, by how ragged the clothing was. Maybe, like him, they were paying for it. Servers, young men, exhausted already, came and went, door leading. They carried the smell of food along with Tibs salivated. As soon as this was done, the adventurer came in, moving people out of their way when they did fast enough. Once at the bar, they demanded tankards, served them. Clearly unhappy about their presence, but not saying anything about their behavior. Tibbs tried to see their left or right. Now he suspected that every adventurer in town had the mark that indicated here was their pub. But maybe this group was just traveling through. Thought it explained their rudeness to workers and runners. After another hour, the crowd in the tavern lightened. The old walrus still hadn't left the bar. What happened? If he noticed was an issue, he'd just run to the bar and make a nuisance of himself and barkeep it removed. He didn't want anyone to notice him. He had to make all attention was elsewhere. He knew from experience and that the easiest way to have people look elsewhere in a tavern was a fight. It also ensured the barkeep would give the bar since he, as the owner, he could allow a fight to stretch. The crowd was now light and without fear of and careful without being noticed. Moved from his hiding place to beside followed her. When she squeezed between two burly men to place food on the table, he goosed her. With a yell of outrage, she punched the man on her left to the hilarity of the others at the table and stormed off. 30 plates there. Barkeep barely glanced. The barkeep barely glanced and annoyed. Tibbs returned next to the target. He picked a man this time, followed the server to the table, rough looking. Sure. They were dressed. With him in passing. Instead of a scream, the man laughed and permissioned the woman to look at him. Fuming, Tibbs decided this tavern worked differently than the street. No server there would let themselves be touched that way, and no patron would let an excuse for violence pass. He needed to find another fight. He located a table with workers at it, along with two runners. By her build, the woman was a fighter. The man next to her had the furtiveness of a rogue. He looked too nervous last long. He thought maybe she was his bodyguard. By his nervousness, he didn't trust her much. She was. Tips could imagine how he paid her, but didn't want to think about that. The workers were well on their way to being drunk. Careful. While the two runners were careful. Watched a rogue switch. They delivered tankard. The one his neighbor had nearly emptied on long. The man was significantly gone. That when he noticed his tankard was somehow still full, he laughed and emptied. It was also gone enough. He never noticed the rogue pick his pocket and actually passed a handful of coin to the fighter. She slipped them leather point tied to her cuff. She had a good thing going. If one of the workers caught on and searched the rogue, they wouldn't find anything. Slip away in the commotion. They'd meet up afterward and their take. The adventurers got involved. She worried about splitting anything. No wonder the rogue looked nervous. Of course, that only worked if her coin purse didn't empty its content as she stood. Exactly what it did once it snuck by the table and cut the leather cord holding the bottom of the purse close. And when one of the workers finally noticed their purse was too light and stood to accuse the rogue, she stood and, even amidst the conversation, distinct hitting coins as they fell to on the floor. Heard. Everyone at the table closed up what they were being told. The fight that followed was larger than Tibs anticipated. Not only did the workers at the table attack the rogue and fighter, but those at the tables surrounding around them jumped in to grab the coins and became the target of the owners and other people who believed they should be the have them. When a tankard flew by someone's table, it had a woman who had been minding her business. Then tankard someone's table to hit a woman who had been minding her business. And was fight. Fighting didn't last long. The barkeep was out from behind the bar and in the middle of it, downing one brawler after the other with countered them with it snuck by before the man was too deep in the fight. Fighting and slipped Opal in, then salt. By the time the adventurers arrived, most fighters were unconscious. Tibs decided not to escape. No matter how much he might look like someone too old and fat to know how to fight, he demonstrated he wasn't to underestimate. He thought that it might be best to show respect and not use the nickname I'd given him. Rogue and fighter were subdued by the adventurer. Wasn't certain to survive, and they were taken out, along with the others. It's not only runners were taken by the adventurer. The workers who'd been involved in the fighting were woken, buckets of, then taken out of the tavern by other patrons. Servers and barkeep righted table, threw hay on the ground to soak up the water, blood before shoveling that into buckets. And a few minutes after that, normalcy returned to the tavern. One person staying to see how the barkeep would react when he decided against it. After what had happened, adventurers back, and while Tibs didn't think he acted, they wouldn't know he was a runner. I'd cart him away just like that. He snuck out and headed for the mess tent and asked for food there. Then he decided his day had been long enough and headed for bed. This 10 of Bottom Row. If you are enjoying, want to know when the next one will be up, subscribe and hit read the store as well as it's available for free on Royal Road. Read ahead the story that's on my Patreon where you support me and get up to chapters ahead. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. The links are in the notes. And for that, I wish you a good day.